You should be grateful I even chose you. Without me, you're nothing. Just a nobody pretending to belong in a billionaire's world. Emily Carter stood frozen in the grand ballroom of the Hawthorne estate, those words echoing in her ears like thunder. Around her, crystal chandeliers glittered, designer gowns swirled, and champagne flowed like water. But none of that sparkle could hide the poison dripping from Victoria Hawthorne's lips. She'd never fit into this family. Just look at her. A nobody trying to marry into billions. The words weren't whispered. They were spoken loud enough for half the room to hear, loud enough to make Emily's cheeks burn with shame. Victoria Hawthorne, Daniel's mother, sat at the head of the long dinner table like a queen on her throne, her diamond necklace catching the light as she looked down at Emily with cold, cutting eyes. Chloe, Daniel's younger sister, leaned forward with a cruel smile. It's adorable, though, like a fairy tale for the newspapers. Too bad fairy tales don't last in the real world. Laughter rippled around the table. Polite, mocking laughter that felt like tiny knives against Emily's skin. But what none of them knew, not Victoria, not Chloe, not even Daniel himself, was the truth hiding behind Emily's quiet smile. She wasn't a poor girl lucky enough to catch a billionaire's eye. She wasn't the struggling waitress the tabloids painted her as. She was Emily Carter Wyndham, the only heir to the Wyndham empire, a fortune so vast it could buy the Hawthorne family 3 times over. She was the woman holding the keys to a $950 million deal that would either save the Hawthorne empire or destroy it completely. And tonight, as she sat at that glittering table being mocked and humiliated, something inside her began to crack. Sometimes the people you look down on are the ones holding your future in their hands. Sometimes the woman you mock is the one who can bring your entire world crashing down. This is that story. Emily remembered the exact moment she fell in love with Daniel Hawthorne. It was a warm summer evening at a small coffee shop in the city, far from the fancy restaurants and exclusive clubs where billionaires usually spent their time. Emily had been sitting alone, sketching in her notebook, when a man slid into the seat across from her. "That's beautiful," he said, pointing to her drawing. She looked up, surprised. The man was handsome, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He wore jeans and a simple white shirt, no fancy suit, no expensive watch screaming wealth. "Thank you," Emily said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand. Emily. They talked for hours that night. About dreams, about life, about everything and nothing. Daniel told her he worked in business, but never mentioned his last name. Emily, for her part, kept her own secrets close. She was tired of people wanting her for her money, for her family name. Just once, she wanted someone to love her for who she was inside. Over the next few weeks, they met again and again. Coffee dates turned into walks in the park. Walks turned into dinners at small, quiet restaurants. Daniel made her laugh. He listened when she talked. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world. One night, lying under the stars in a meadow outside the city, Daniel turned to her and said, "You're different, Emily. You're real. Everyone in my world is fake, always wanting something. But you, you're just you." Emily's heart had soared. This was it. This was real love. But then everything changed. It happened on their 2-month anniversary. Daniel picked her up in a car Emily had never seen before, a sleek black limousine with a driver in uniform. "Daniel, what's going on?" she asked, confused. He smiled, looking nervous. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you from the beginning." He took her to a massive mansion on the edge of the city. As they drove through the iron gates and up the long driveway, Emily's stomach twisted. "Daniel, whose house is this?" "Mine," he said quietly. "Well, my family's. Emily, I'm Daniel Hawthorne. My family owns Hawthorne Industries." Emily's breath caught. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Hawthorne Industries was one of the biggest companies in the country, worth billions. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Because I wanted you to know me first. Not my money. Not my name. Just ... me." He took her hand, his eyes pleading. "I love you, Emily. I love you. Not what you have or who you know. Just you." Emily's heart ached. She understood completely. She had done the same thing, hiding her own identity for the exact same reason. "I love you too," she said. And she meant it. But what Emily didn't know was that Daniel's love came with conditions. Conditions she was about to discover. Victoria Hawthorne stood in the grand entrance hall of the family mansion, looking Emily up and down like she was inspecting a piece of furniture. "So you're the girl my son has been sneaking around with," Victoria said, her voice cold and sharp. "Mother, please," Daniel said, but there was no real force in his words. "Let me see her properly." Victoria walked in a slow circle around Emily, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Pretty enough, I suppose. But Daniel, darling, she's so ... ordinary." Emily felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her chin up. Chloe appeared on the staircase, looking down with amused eyes. "Oh my God, Daniel, you weren't kidding. She really does look like she walked out of a thrift store." "Chloe, that's enough," Daniel said, but he was smiling, actually smiling. Emily's heart sank. "Where did you say you were from, dear?" Victoria asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I grew up in the city," Emily said carefully. "And your family? What do they do?" Emily hesitated. This was her chance to tell the truth, to reveal who she really was. But something stopped her. She wanted to see if Daniel would defend her, if he would stand up for her, even when his family was cruel. "My parents passed away when I was young," Emily said, which was true. "I've been on my own for a while." Victoria's eyes glittered. "How tragic." "And convenient." "Mother," Daniel started. "It's fine, Daniel," Victoria interrupted. "If this is what you want, we'll play along. But don't expect us to pretend she belongs here." That night, lying in bed in one of the mansion's guest rooms, Emily made a decision. She would keep her secret a little longer. She would test Daniel's love, see if it was strong enough to withstand his family's cruelty and his own pride. She wanted to believe in him. She needed to believe that the man who held her hand under the stars was still there, somewhere beneath the Hawthorne name. 2 weeks later, Daniel proposed. It happened at a fancy restaurant, in front of dozens of photographers and society reporters. The ring was enormous, glittering with diamonds that probably cost more than most people's houses. "Emily Carter, will you marry me?" Daniel asked, down on one knee. The crowd held its breath. Emily looked into his eyes, searching for the man she loved. She saw warmth there, saw hope. Maybe, she thought, maybe this would work. Maybe love would be enough. "Yes," she whispered. The restaurant erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Strangers cheered. But that night, when they were alone, Daniel's tone changed. "You did great," he said, scrolling through his phone. "The press loves it. Billionaire marries for love. Perfect story." "Story?" Emily asked softly. "You know what I mean. The optics are good. Common girl marries into wealth. It makes me look human, relatable." Emily's chest tightened. "Is that why you proposed? For optics?" Daniel finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. I care about you. But this is also good for business. Can't it be both?" She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him the truth right then, throw her real identity in his face, and watch his expression change. But she didn't. "He'll change," she told herself. "Once we're married, once the pressure is off, he'll be the man I fell in love with again." Which brought her to tonight, the official engagement party at the Hawthorne estate. Emily wore a beautiful cream-colored dress that Daniel's stylist had picked out. Her hair was swept up in an elegant style, her makeup perfect. She looked the part of a billionaire's bride. But inside, she felt like she was drowning. The ballroom was packed with wealthy guests, all dressed in designer clothes, all talking in voices that dripped with money and privilege. Emily recognized some faces from magazines and news reports, business tickers, politicians, celebrities. And they all looked at her the same way, with curiosity and pity. "That's her?" she heard someone whisper. "She's prettier than I thought. Still, imagine going from nothing to all this. She must feel so overwhelmed. I give it a year before he trades her in for someone more suitable." Emily kept her head high and her smile fixed, even as each whispered comment cut deeper. Victoria Hawthorne held court at the main table, surrounded by her closest friends and family. When Emily approached, Victoria barely glanced at her. "Sit there," Victoria said, pointing to a chair at the far end of the table, not next to Daniel, not anywhere important, at the end, like an afterthought. Emily sat, folding her hands in her lap. Chloe leaned over, her perfume overwhelming. "Must be weird for you, huh? Being around all this money. Try not to break anything. Everything here costs more than your entire life probably did." "Chloe," Daniel said, but he was laughing. "Be nice." "I am being nice," Chloe said innocently. "I'm just saying, it must be an adjustment." Victoria's voice cut through the chatter. "She'll never fit into this family. Just look at her. A nobody trying to marry into billions." The table went quiet. Emily felt every eye turned to her. Her hands trembled in her lap, but she kept her face calm. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Oh, come on, Mother," Chloe said with mock sympathy. "It's kind of sweet, like a charity case. Daniel's little project." More laughter. Cruel, casual laughter. And Daniel? Daniel just smiled and sipped his champagne. Emily's heart cracked a little more. The orchestra began to play, and Daniel stood, extending his hand to Emily. "Dance with me, my love," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the room. Emily took his hand and let him lead her to the dance floor. The crowd parted for them, cameras flashing from every direction. Daniel pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. They began to waltz, moving smoothly across the polished floor. To everyone watching, they were perfect. The billionaire and his bride-to-be, lost in love. But as they turned, Daniel leaned close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "Smile bigger," he whispered. "The cameras are watching." Emily's smile widened automatically. "Good girl," he said. "Remember, you're my fairy tale, my charity project that worked out. Don't ruin the story." His words hit like ice water, but Emily kept dancing, kept smiling. "I love you," she whispered, desperate to hear him say it back. Daniel twirled her, dipping her low as the crowd applauded. When he pulled her back up, his smile was dazzling. But his eyes were empty. "Love is great for the cameras," he said quietly. "Keep giving them that." The music swelled to its final notes. Daniel kissed her hand with a flourish, and the crowd erupted in applause. Emily stood there, frozen, her heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. She couldn't breathe. The ballroom felt too hot, too crowded, too full of lies. Emily slipped away when no one was looking, finding a side door that led to a balcony overlooking the estate gardens. The night air was cool and clean, filling her lungs as she gripped the stone railing. Below, the city lights twinkled in the distance. Somewhere out there was the real world. The world where people loved each other without conditions, without cameras, without cruelty. "He's going to change," Emily whispered to herself, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "The man I fell in love with is still in there. He has to be." But even as she said the words, doubt crept in like poison. Behind her, the balcony door opened. Emily quickly wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "There you are," Daniel said, stepping outside with a glass of champagne in hand. People are asking for you. I just needed some air, Emily said quietly. Daniel came to stand beside her, looking out at the view. For a moment, he seemed almost like the old Daniel, the one from the coffee shop. Pretty night, he said. Yes. Silence stretched between them. Daniel, Emily said softly, turning to face him. Why didn't you defend me tonight? When your mother said those things, when Chloe mocked me, why didn't you say anything? Daniel sighed, taking a long sip of his champagne. Emily, it's just talk. They don't mean anything by it. Yes, they do. You're too sensitive, he said, his tone dismissive. This is how wealthy families are. Everyone plays games. Everyone judges. You just have to ignore it. But I'm going to be your wife. And you should be grateful for that, Daniel interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp. He turned to face her fully, his eyes hard. Do you have any idea how many women would kill to be in your position? You came from nothing, Emily. Nothing. And I'm giving you everything. The least you can do is smile and play the part. Emily felt like she'd been slapped. The part? Yes, the part. The sweet, humble girl who's so grateful to marry into wealth. That's what people want to see. That's what makes this work. He gestured back toward the ballroom. In there, we're a fairy tale. Don't ruin it by being difficult. I'm not being difficult, Emily said, her voice breaking. I'm just asking you to stand up for me, to show your family that you love me. Daniel's expression softened slightly. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I do care about you, Emily, but this is bigger than just us. This is about image, about business, about legacy. You need to understand that. And what about love? Love is part of the image, he said simply. Emily's heart shattered completely. Daniel checked his watch. Come on, we need to go back inside. My father wants to make a toast. He turned and walked back toward the door, not even waiting to see if she followed. Emily stood alone on the balcony, the cool night air drying her tears. Deep inside her purse, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, seeing a message from Marcus, her family's longtime lawyer and advisor. Marcus was one of the few people who knew her true identity. Marcus, the Hawthorne deal is ready to sign. Documents are prepared. Just need your final approval. Are you certain about moving forward with this? Emily stared at the message, her finger hovering over the screen. The deal. The $950 million deal that would merge Wyndham Industries with Hawthorne Industries, securing both families' futures for generations. A deal that the Hawthornes desperately needed, but didn't even know was in her hands. They thought she was nobody. They had no idea she was the one holding their entire future. Emily looked back toward the ballroom, where Daniel was probably already laughing and chatting, playing the perfect son, the perfect businessman, the perfect fraud. Not yet, she whispered to herself. Give him one more chance. He'll change. He has to. She typed back to Marcus. Wait, I'll let you know. Then she slipped her phone back into her purse, took a deep breath, and walked back into the ballroom wearing the same smile that was slowly killing her inside. Richard Hawthorne, Daniel's father, stood at the front of the room, tapping his champagne glass with a spoon until the crowd fell silent. Friends, family, distinguished guests, Richard began, his voice booming with authority. Tonight we celebrate not just an engagement, but a love story that has captured all our hearts. Emily stood beside Daniel, his arm around her waist for the cameras. My son Daniel has always been smart, successful, and ambitious, Richard continued. But tonight, he's shown us something more important. He's shown us heart. He's chosen love over convention, chosen genuine feeling over social expectations. The crowd murmured in approval. Emily Carter, Richard said, turning to look at her with what almost seemed like warmth. You may not come from our world, but you've brought something priceless into our family. You've reminded us what truly matters. Emily felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe they would accept her after all. "You've reminded us," Richard continued, his smile sharpening, "of how fortunate we are, how blessed, and how important it is to give back to those less fortunate." The hope died instantly. "To Daniel and Emily," Richard raised his glass. "May their love inspire us all to be charitable." The crowd laughed, understanding the insult wrapped in pretty words. They raised their glasses. "To Daniel and Emily." Emily felt Daniel's arm tighten around her waist, keeping her in place as humiliation washed over her. She was a charity case, a photo opportunity, a feel-good story to make the Hawthorne family look generous and kind. That's all she had ever been to them. And as she stood there, smiling for the cameras while her heart broke into dust, Emily Carter Wyndham made a decision. She would give Daniel one more chance. One final chance to prove that the man she fell in love with was real. But if he failed, if he showed her one more time that she was nothing but a prop in his perfect life, then she would stop playing the role of the grateful nobody. She would show them exactly who Emily Carter really was. And when she did, the Hawthorne empire would tremble. The night ended with more toasts, more dances, more cameras flashing in Emily's face. Through it all, she smiled. She played her part perfectly. But behind her eyes, something had changed. The girl who believed in fairy tales was starting to wake up. And when she fully opened her eyes, the Hawthornes were going to wish they had treated Cinderella with more respect. Because this Cinderella didn't need a prince to save her. She was the kingdom. The headlines the next morning were exactly what Daniel wanted. Modern fairy tale. Billionaire Hawthorne chooses love over fortune. From rags to riches. Emily Carter's Cinderella story. Love conquers all. Daniel Hawthorne proves money can't buy happiness. Emily sat at the breakfast table in Daniel's penthouse, staring at the newspapers spread before her. In every photo, they looked perfect. Daniel gazing at her with adoring eyes. Emily smiling up at him like he was her whole world. Their hands intertwined, their bodies close, their love seemingly unbreakable. It was all a lie. Daniel walked into the dining room, already dressed in an expensive suit, his phone pressed to his ear. He was talking business, barking orders at someone on the other end. He poured himself coffee without even glancing at Emily. When he finally hung up, he tossed the phone on the table and looked at the newspapers. "Perfect," he said, satisfaction clear in his voice. "Absolutely perfect. My publicist says we're trending on every social media platform. Everyone's talking about us. That single quote's good," Emily said quietly. Daniel finally looked at her, really looked at her, and frowned. "Why aren't you dressed yet?" "We have that charity event in 2 hours. I didn't know we had. I told you yesterday." Daniel interrupted, his tone sharp. "The Children's Hospital fundraiser. Remember? You're supposed to give a speech about overcoming adversity." Emily's stomach twisted. "Daniel, I don't know if I'm comfortable." "Comfortable?" Daniel set down his coffee cup hard enough to make a sharp clinking sound. "Emily, this is part of the deal. You're my fiancée now. You have responsibilities. You represent me, represent my family. You can't just hide away because you're uncomfortable." "I'm not hiding. I just..." "Just what? Just want to embarrass me?" His eyes flashed with anger. "Do you know how many strings I pulled to get you on that stage? How much work my team put into crafting your story?" "My story?" "Yes, your story. Poor girl makes good. Finds love despite having nothing. Inspires children to dream big." He picked up his phone again. "It's gold, Emily. Don't ruin it." Emily felt something cold settle in her chest. "Is that all I am to you? A story?" Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead like she was giving him a headache. "Don't start this again. We talked about this. You knew what you were getting into." "No," Emily said, her voice stronger now. "I thought I was getting into a marriage." A partnership. Love. And you are, Daniel said, but his voice was flat, mechanical. But you're also getting wealth, status, security. Things you never had before. Things most people would kill for. So yes, there are expectations. Deal with it. He walked out of the room, leaving Emily sitting alone with the newspapers full of lies. She looked down at her engagement ring, the massive diamond catching the morning light. It was beautiful, expensive, cold, just like everything else in her new life. 2 hours later, Emily stood backstage at the Children's Hospital fundraiser, her hands trembling as she held the speech Daniel's team had written for her. Through the curtain, she could hear the crowd, wealthy donors, hospital administrators, press. Hundreds of people waiting to hear the inspiring story of Emily Carter, the poor girl who found her prince. Except it wasn't her story. It was a story someone else had written, full of struggles she'd never had and poverty she'd never experienced. It was fiction designed to make rich people feel good about donating money. "You're on in 2 minutes," a stagehand told her. Emily's heart pounded. She wanted to run. She wanted to tear up the speech and tell the truth. She wanted to scream that she wasn't who they thought she was. But Daniel was in the front row, watching her with expectant eyes. Victoria and Chloe sat beside him, looking amused, like they were waiting for her to fail. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome Emily Carter." The crowd applauded. Emily forced her legs to move, forced herself to walk onto that stage. The lights were blinding. Cameras flashed. Faces stared up at her, waiting. Emily looked down at the speech in her shaking hands. Words about growing up with nothing, about working 3 jobs, about barely scraping by, about how lucky she was that Daniel Hawthorne had noticed her. All lies. She opened her mouth, ready to read the words they'd given her. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way Daniel was watching her, not with love, but with calculation, making sure she performed correctly. Maybe it was Victoria's smug smile, so certain Emily would humiliate herself. Maybe it was the memory of every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every moment she'd been treated like she was worth nothing. Emily set the speech down on the podium. "I'm supposed to tell you a story today," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "A story about a poor girl who got lucky. A girl who had nothing and then found everything when a wealthy man chose her." Daniel shifted in his seat, his smile tight. "But that's not really my story," Emily continued. "My real story is about love. About believing in someone so much that you willing to hide who you really are, just to see if they allow love the real you." The crowd was silent now, leaning forward. "I came into this relationship hoping to find genuine love. The kind that doesn't care about money or status or what other people think. The kind that stands up for you when people are cruel. The kind that sees you as a partner, not a project." Daniel's face had gone pale. Victoria was glaring. But Emily couldn't stop now. "And I've learned something important," Emily said, tears pricking her eyes. "Sometimes the people who look like they have everything are actually the poorest of all, because they don't know what real love looks like. They don't know how to see past a person's bank account to their heart." She looked directly at Daniel. "And that's the saddest poverty there is." For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding, many people wiping their eyes. But Daniel wasn't clapping. He sat frozen, his jaw clenched, fury radiating from every line of his body. Emily walked off the stage on shaking legs, knowing she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. The car ride back to the penthouse was silent. Daniel drove with white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the road. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her heart pounding, but her mind strangely clear. She'd spoken truth for the first time in months, and despite the fear coursing through her, she felt lighter. They took the elevator up to the penthouse in crushing silence. The doors opened. They walked inside. The moment the door closed behind them, Daniel exploded. What the hell was that? He roared, throwing his keys across the room. They hit the wall with a sharp clatter. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking, Emily said quietly, that I'm tired of lying. Lying? Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. You embarrassed me, Emily. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone who matters in this city. I told the truth. The truth? Daniel stepped closer, his face twisted with anger. The truth is that you're nobody without me. The truth is that I gave you everything. The truth is that you should be grateful instead of pulling this melodramatic stunt. Emily felt something inside her finally snap. Grateful? For what, Daniel? For being mocked by your family? For being treated like your charity project? For being paraded around like a trophy while you barely even look at me when we're alone? You knew what this was, Daniel said coldly. You knew from the beginning. No, Emily said, tears streaming down her face now. I knew what you pretended it was. You told me you loved me. You told me I was different. You told me you wanted someone real. And I do, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. But I also have responsibilities. My family has expectations. The business has needs. You can't just... Can't what? Can't expect you to actually love me? Emily's voice cracked. Can't expect you to defend me when your mother calls me worthless? Can't expect you to treat me like a human being instead of a photo opportunity? Daniel's expression hardened. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should leave. The words hung in the air like poison. Emily stared at him, searching his face for any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with. But he was gone. Maybe he'd never really existed at all. Maybe I should, she whispered. For just a second, something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Panic? Regret? But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Fine, he said coldly. Leave. See how far you get without the Hawthorne name protecting you. Emily turned and walked toward the bedroom, her whole body shaking. Behind her, she heard Daniel pour himself a drink, ice clinking in the glass. She grabbed a small bag and started throwing clothes into it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip anything. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, seeing another message from Marcus. Marcus, Emily, I need your answer about the deal. The Hawthorns are pushing for a meeting. They don't know you're involved, but they're desperate. Their stock has dropped 30% this quarter. Without this merger, they'll be in serious trouble within 6 months. What should I tell them? Emily stared at the message, her mind spinning. The Hawthorns were failing. They needed the Wyndham merger to survive. And they had no idea that the nobody their son was engaged to was the only person who could save them. Or destroy them. Another message came through. Marcus, also, I found something you need to see. Call me. It's about Daniel. Emily's heart stopped. She quickly dialed Marcus's number. Marcus? What is it? Emily, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I had Daniel investigated. Just as a precaution. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. He's been seeing someone else. Isabella Thornton. His ex-girlfriend. The room spun. Emily sat down hard on the bed. How long? She whispered. The entire time you've been together, Marcus said quietly. I'm sorry, Emily. I have photos, hotel records, phone logs. He never stopped seeing her. The engagement to you. It appears to be for publicity. His family wanted him with Isabella, but the press loves your story. So he's keeping you for the cameras and her for everything else. Emily couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The room was spinning. Her heart was breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. Emily? Are you there? I'm here, she managed to say. What do you want me to do about the deal? Emily closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw every humiliation, Every cruel word, every dismissive glance. She saw Daniel calling her his project. She saw Victoria's contempt. She saw Chloe's mocking smile. And she saw Daniel, her Daniel, the man she'd loved with everything she had, treating her like she was worth nothing while running to another woman's arms. "Schedule the meeting," Emily said, her voice cold and clear. "Tell the Hawthorns that the Wyndham representative is ready to discuss the merger." "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. "I'm sure. But Marcus, don't tell them it's me. Not yet. I want to see their faces when they realize exactly who they've been humiliating." She could hear the smile in Marcus's voice. "Understood. I'll set it up for next week." Emily hung up and sat in the silence of the bedroom. Through the door, she could hear Daniel talking on his phone, his voice warm and gentle in a way he never spoke to her anymore. "I know, maybe. I miss you too. Yes, she's being difficult. Don't worry. It won't last much longer. Once we're married, I can go back to keeping things quiet. The public will lose interest eventually." A pause. "Of course I love you. You know you're the only one. Emily is just ... for show. That's all she's ever been." Emily felt something inside her freeze solid. Not her heart breaking, that had already happened. This was something else. This was her heart turning to ice. She walked out of the bedroom, her bag in hand. Daniel was still on the phone, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. "I'm leaving," Emily said. Daniel turned, covering the phone. "Fine. Cool off. Come back when you're ready to apologize." "I'm not coming back," Emily said. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic. Where are you going to go?" "You have nothing without me." Emily really looked at him, and wondered how she'd ever thought he was worth loving. "You have no idea what I have," she said quietly. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Daniel standing in his golden penthouse, completely unaware that he'd just destroyed the only thing that could save his family's empire. Emily checked into a hotel under her real name, Emily Carter Wyndham. The staff's eyes widened with recognition, but they were too professional to say anything. They treated her with the respect she'd hidden for months. Her suite was beautiful, quiet, and most importantly, far away from the Hawthorns. She sat on the plush sofa and finally let herself cry. Not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere dark and broken inside her. She'd been so stupid, so naive. She'd thought if she just loved Daniel enough, believed in him enough, gave him enough chances, he would become the man she'd fallen in love with. But that man had never existed. He'd been a mask, a performance, a lie designed to catch her. Her phone rang. It was her best friend, Sarah. Sarah was one of the few people who knew Emily's real identity. "I saw your speech," Sarah said as soon as Emily answered. "Emmy, what happened?" "Everything fell apart," Emily said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Come over, right now. Don't argue." An hour later, Emily sat in Sarah's apartment, wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea while Sarah sat across from her with fury in her eyes. "I knew that family was poison," Sarah said. "I told you from the beginning." "I know," Emily said quietly. "And Daniel? God, Emmy, he's been cheating on you this whole time?" Emily nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Sarah was silent for a moment. Then her expression shifted from sympathy to something harder. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Emily whispered. "Part of me just wants to disappear. Change my name. Move to another country. Forget any of this ever happened. And the other part?" Emily looked up, meeting Sarah's eyes. "The other part wants to watch them burn." Sarah smiled slowly. "There's the Emmy I know. The one who doesn't take crap from anyone. I just ... I loved him so much, Sarah. I really believed. I know you did. And that's why what he did is even worse." Sarah leaned forward. "But Emmy, you have the power here. You always have. You're not the helpless nobody they think you are. You're Emily Carter Wyndham. Your family's company could buy and sell the Hawthorns 3 times over. It's not about money. It's not just about money, Sarah corrected. It's about respect. It's about showing them that they made the biggest mistake of their lives when they treated you like garbage. It's about making sure they can never do this to anyone else ever again. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and called Marcus. Marcus, it's me. About the meeting with the HAWTHORNE as ... Yes, I want to be there, in person. But I don't want them to know until the perfect moment. I can arrange that, Marcus said. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Emily said, her voice steady and cold, that it's time the Hawthorns learned exactly who they've been mocking. And I'm thinking that they're about to pay the price for every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every moment they made me feel worthless. The meeting is scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. at their corporate headquarters, Marcus said. I told them it was with the senior representative from Wyndham Industries. They're desperate, Emily. They literally cannot survive without this deal. Good, Emily said. Then they'll be very motivated to be on their best behavior. She hung up and looked at Sarah, who was grinning. Are you really going to do this? Sarah asked. Yes, Emily said. I gave Daniel every chance. I believed in him. I loved him with everything I had. And he threw it all away, like it meant nothing. She stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out below her, full of lights and possibilities. They called me nobody, Emily said quietly. They treated me like I should be grateful. They even acknowledged my existence. They mocked me, humiliated me, made me feel small. She turned back to Sarah, her eyes blazing with determination. It's time to show them exactly who this nobody really is. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Marcus worked with Emily to prepare for the meeting, going over every detail of the Wyndham-Hawthorne merger proposal. You understand, Marcus said, that if you pull out of this deal, Hawthorne Industries will likely collapse within the year. Their debt is massive. Their stock is tanking. Your family's investment is literally the only thing that can save them. I understand, Emily said. And you're prepared for the fallout? The press will go crazy. Your real identity will be public knowledge. I'm ready, Emily said. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be less than she was. Meanwhile, Daniel had been calling nonstop. Emily ignored every call, every text, every voicemail. Finally, on Thursday night, he showed up at the hotel. Security called up to her room. Ms. Wyndham, there's a Daniel Hawthorne here to see you. Should we send him up? Emily's heart clenched. Part of her still wanted to see him, wanted to hear him say he was sorry, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could change. But she remembered his voice on the phone. Emily is just for show. That's all she's ever been. Tell him I'm not available, Emily said. Understood, ma'am. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Daniel, Emily, this is ridiculous. Come home. We need to talk. Emily stared at the message. Home. He still thought she would come crawling back. Another message came through. Daniel, you're embarrassing both of us. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just come back and we'll figure this out. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to see his face when he realized who she really was, what she could do to him. But no, that moment needed to happen face to face. And it needed to happen in front of his entire family. She turned off her phone and went to bed, trying to quiet the storm of emotions raging inside her. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the Hawthorns would learn the truth. And Emily Carter Wyndham would finally stop being invisible. Emily woke up early, her stomach a knot of anxiety and anticipation. She stood in front of her closet, looking at the clothes she'd brought with her. No more soft colors. No more modest dresses designed to make her look harmless and grateful. She pulled out a tailored black suit designer, expensive, powerful. She styled her hair in a sleek-up bow, applied makeup that was polished and professional, slipped on heels that added 3 inches to her height. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She didn't look like the meek, grateful girl the Hawthorns had mocked. She looked like exactly what she was, a billionaire heiress, a woman who commanded respect, a woman who was about to shatter some very comfortable illusions. Marcus met her in the hotel lobby at 1:30. He took one look at her and smiled. "They have no idea what's about to hit them," he said. "Good," Emily replied. They rode to Hawthorne Industries headquarters in Emily's private car. She watched the city pass by the tinted windows, her heart pounding harder with every mile. Part of her still hurt. Part of her still loved Daniel, still remembered the man who had held her hand under the stars and made her believe in fairy tales. But that man had never been real. And it was time to stop mourning a ghost. The car pulled up to the gleaming glass tower that housed Hawthorne Industries. Emily had been here before, but always as Daniel's fiancée, always entering through side doors, always treated like an afterthought. Not today. Today, she walked through the front entrance with Marcus at her side. The receptionist's eyes widened with recognition, not as Daniel's fiancée, but as Emily Wyndham. "Ms. Wyndham," the receptionist said, standing quickly. "They're expecting you in the main conference room. Top floor." "Thank you," Emily said smoothly. They rode the elevator up in silence. Emily's reflection stared back at her from the polished walls, strong, composed, ready. The elevator doors opened. And there, waiting in the hallway outside the conference room, stood Daniel. He looked terrible. His suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his hair messy. When he saw Emily, relief flooded his face. "Thank God," he said, rushing toward her. "Emily, I've been trying to reach you for days." "Where have you been?" "We need to talk about—" He stopped short when he saw Marcus. "Who's this?" Daniel asked, confusion crossing his face. "This," Emily said coldly, "is Marcus Chun, the chief legal counsel for Wyndham Industries." Daniel blinked. "Wyndham? What does that have to do with—" Then understanding began to dawn on his face. Slowly, painfully. "Emily," he said carefully, "why are you here?" Emily smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "I'm here for the merger meeting," she said. "Didn't you know? Wyndham Industries is considering a partnership with Hawthorne Industries. Your family is counting on it, actually. I hear you're in quite a bit of financial trouble without it." Daniel's face went white. "Emily, what are you?" "It's Ms. Wyndham in a professional setting," Emily corrected. "Shall we go in?" "Your family is waiting." She walked past him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind her, she heard Daniel's sharp intake of breath as the pieces finally started coming together. Marcus opened the conference room door. Inside, the entire Hawthorne family sat around a massive table. Richard Hawthorne at the head, Victoria to his right, Chloe beside her, various board members and lawyers filling the other seats. They all looked up when Emily entered. Victoria's face immediately twisted with disdain. "Daniel, what is she doing here?" "This is a business meeting." "Mrs. Hawthorne," Marcus said smoothly, "allow me to introduce Emily Carter Wyndham, the primary shareholder and decision-maker for Wyndham Industries." The room went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Victoria's mouth fell open. Richard's eyes went wide. Chloe looked like she'd been slapped, and Daniel ... Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his face ashen, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd done. "I'm sorry," Richard finally managed to say. "Did you say Wyndham?" "Yes," Emily said, taking a seat at the table with perfect composure. "Emily Carter Wyndham. Carter is my mother's maiden name. Wyndham is my father's family name. The family that owns Wyndham Industries, The company you've been desperately trying to secure a merger with for the past 6 months. She smiled at their shocked faces. Surprised? The silence in the conference room was deafening. Emily watched as the color drained from every Hawthorne face, each of them processing the impossible truth that had just shattered their world. Victoria was the first to recover, though her voice shook. This is ... This is some kind of joke. Emily, if this is your way of getting attention. It's not a joke, Marcus said, sliding folders across the table to each board member. Inside you'll find Ms. Wyndham's credentials, her ownership documents, and her family's complete financial portfolio. Everything is verified and authenticated. Richard Hawthorne opened his folder with trembling hands. His face went from pale to gray as he scanned the documents. My God, he whispered, it's real. The Wyndham Empire ... You're Emily Wyndham. Carter Wyndham, Emily corrected calmly. I prefer to use both names. My mother's legacy matters to me as much as my father's, though I suppose that as a concept that might be foreign to you, valuing people for who they are rather than just their last names. The barb hit its mark. Victoria flinched. Chloe was staring at Emily like she was seeing a ghost. But you were nobody. You worked at a coffee shop. You had nothing. You saw what I wanted you to see, Emily said, her voice steady and cold. I worked at that coffee shop because I volunteered there. It was a charity program I funded to help young people learn job skills. I wasn't an employee. I was the founder. She turned her gaze to Daniel, who stood frozen near the door, his face a mask of shock and dawning horror. When I met your son, I didn't tell him who I really was. I wanted to see if someone could love me for myself, not for my money or my family name. I wanted to find genuine love. Her voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. What a foolish dream that turned out to be. Emily, Daniel finally found his voice, stepping forward. I can explain. It's Ms. Wyndham. Emily cut him off sharply. And no, you can't explain. There's no explanation for calling someone you claim to love a charity project. There's no explanation for mocking them in front of your family. There's no explanation for ... double quotes. She paused, gathering her strength. For sleeping with your ex-girlfriend while planning a wedding to someone else. Victoria gasped. Richard's jaw clenched. But it was Chloe who spoke, her voice small and uncertain. Daniel, UDIDN single quotes T ... quotes. Oh, he did, Emily said, pulling out her phone. She tapped the screen, and an image appeared on the conference room's projection system. Hotel records. Photos of Daniel and Isabella entering and leaving together. Text messages. All time-stamped throughout Emily's entire relationship with him. Daniel's face crumbled. Emily, please, let me explain. Isabella was just the woman you actually loved while you used me as a publicity stunt? Emily's voice was ice. Just the woman you told that I was for show? Just the woman you promised you'd go back to once the wedding hype died down? She stood up, placing both hands on the conference table, leaning forward. Every eye in the room was on her. Let me tell you all something about respect, Emily said, her voice ringing clear. I came into your lives with nothing but love and honesty. I asked for nothing except to be treated like a human being. And what did I get? She turned to Victoria. You called me worthless. You said I'd never fit into your family. You mocked me at every dinner, every event, every gathering. Then to Chloe, you made fun of my clothes, my background, my everything. You treated me like I was dirt on your expensive shoes. To Richard, you toasted to how charitable your family was for letting me in, like I was a stray dog you decided to feed. And finally to Daniel. And you. You told me you loved me. You proposed to me in front of the world. You made me believe in a future together. And the entire time, I was nothing but a photo opportunity. A way to make yourself look good while you lived your real life with someone else. Tears threatened. But Emily refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. I gave you everything, she said quietly, her voice breaking just slightly. My trust, my love, my dignity. I let myself be humiliated over and over because I believed in you. I believed the man I fell in love with was real. He is real, Daniel said desperately, moving toward her. Emily, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I do love you. I do. Everything just got so complicated with the family and the business. And stop, Emily said, holding up her hand. Just stop. You don't love me, Daniel. You never did. You loved what I represented. The story, the image, the perfect fairy tale you could sell to the world. She walked around the table slowly, addressing the entire room now. When I started dating your son, Mr. Hawthorne, my father's advisors told me to do a background check on your family. I refused. I said I didn't need to know about money or business. I just needed to know Daniel's heart. Emily stopped, looking at each of them in turn. What a mistake that was. Because if I had done that background check, I would have known that Hawthorne Industries is drowning in debt. I would have known that your stock has plummeted 40% in the last year. I would have known that 3 of your major investors pulled out last quarter. I would have known that you were months away from defaulting on loans that could destroy everything your family has built. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard's face had gone completely ashen. And I would have known, Emily continued, her voice deadly quiet, that the merger with Wyndham Industries isn't just a good opportunity for you. It's your only hope for survival. She returned to her seat, sitting down with perfect composure. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. This, Marcus said, is the merger proposal. As you all know, Wyndham Industries has been considering a partnership with Hawthorne Industries. The terms are generous. Wyndham would invest $950 million in exchange for a 40% stake in your company. The infusion of capital would stabilize your debt, restore investor confidence, and secure your family's legacy for generations. He slid the document across the table to Richard. It would also, Marcus continued, include a guaranteed position for Daniel Hawthorne as co-CEO of the merged entity, along with seats on the board for Mrs. Hawthorne and Miss Hawthorne. Essentially, it would give your family everything you need to not just survive, but thrive. Richard picked up the document with shaking hands, flipping through pages of financial projections, legal terms, and security guarantees. It was everything they'd been dreaming of for months. This is ... Richard's voice cracked. This is incredibly generous. It was, Emily said quietly. Past tense. The room went still. I'm sorry? Victoria said, her voice sharp with panic. Emily stood up, smoothing her suit jacket. I said it W.S. generous. That proposal was written 3 months ago, when I still believed I was joining a family that would love and respect me. When I still thought Daniel was the man I'd fallen in love with. When I still had hope. She looked at Daniel, her eyes hard despite the pain swirling in them. But that was before I was called a nobody. Before I was mocked and humiliated. Before I discovered my fiancé was cheating on me while calling me his charity project. Before I realized that every kind word, every promise, every I love you was just part of a performance. Emily, please. Richard stood up, his voice desperate. Whatever my family did, whatever mistakes we made, we can fix this. We can apologize. We can... Apologize? Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to apologize now? Now that you know who I really am? Now that you need something from me? She shook her head. Where were those apologies when I was just poor Emily? Where was the basic human decency when you thought I had no power, no money, no way to fight back? Victoria's face had gone from pale to flushed. Now you wait just a minute. We welcomed you into our family. You tolerated me. Emily's voice rose for the first time. sharp with months of suppressed pain. You tolerated me like I was an embarrassing pet Daniel had brought home. You made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy, wasn't one of you. She took a breath, steadying herself. And you know what? You were right. I'm not one of you. I'm not someone who values money over people. I am not someone who treats others like garbage based on what I think their bank account looks like. I'm not someone who cheats and lies and manipulates people who love them. Emily walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Behind her, she could hear Victoria starting to cry. Richard was frantically flipping through the merger documents, like he might find some magic solution. Chloe sat in stunned silence. And Daniel was standing there with tears running down his face, finally understanding what he'd lost. "Ms. Wyndham," Richard said, his voice breaking, "I am begging you. Not for me, but for the hundreds of employees who work for this company, for their families, for the legacy my grandfather built. Please don't let my family's mistakes destroy all of that." Emily turned from the window, her expression unreadable. "You're right, Mr. Hawthorne. It is not fair that hundreds of innocent people should suffer because your family lacks basic human decency." Hope flickered across Richard's face. "Which is why," Emily continued, "I've spent the last few days working with my team to develop an alternative solution." Marcus pulled out another document, this one much thicker. "Wyndham Industries will still invest in saving Hawthorne Industries," Emily said, "but not through a merger. Instead, we'll be acquiring 75% of the company. Hawthorne Industries will become a subsidiary of Wyndham Enterprises." The room erupted. 75%? Victoria shrieked. "That's a hostile takeover." "It's a rescue," Emily corrected coldly. "And you're in no position to negotiate. You have 3 options. Accept my offer, find another investor who doesn't exist, or declare bankruptcy within the next 60 days. Those are your choices." Richard sank back into his chair, his face in his hands. "The terms are as follows," Marcus continued, reading from the document. "Wyndham Industries will invest the full $950 million. All current debts will be restructured and paid. Employees will keep their jobs with improved benefits. The Hawthorne name will remain on the building. However," Emily said, her voice sharp, "there will be changes to leadership. Richard, you'll remain as chairman, but in an advisory capacity only. The board will be restructured with Wyndham appointees holding the majority. And Daniel ... She looked at him for a long moment. He stared back, his eyes pleading, desperate. "Daniel will be removed from all executive positions, effective immediately. He'll retain a small percentage of his shares, enough to live comfortably. But he will have no decision-making power, no board seat, and no role in the company's future." "You can't do that." Daniel exploded, finally finding his voice. "This is my family's company. I've worked here my entire life. You can't?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Watch me. You see, Daniel, this is what happens when you treat people like they're worthless. Sometimes they turn out to be the only thing standing between you and destruction. And sometimes they decide you don't deserve to be saved." She turned to Marcus. "The offer is non-negotiable and expires at 5 p.m. today. That gives you 3 hours to decide." "3 hours?" Victoria gasped. "We need time to consult our lawyers, our advisors." "You've had months to prepare for this merger," Emily said. 3 hours is more than generous, considering how you've treated me. Accept the offer, or watch everything crumble." "Your choice." Emily picked up her purse and walked toward the door. As she passed Daniel, he grabbed her arm. "Emily, please, don't do this. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But please, don't destroy my entire life over it." Emily looked down at his hand on her arm, and up at his face. This close, she could see the genuine fear in his eyes, the panic, the regret. Part of her, the part that still remembered loving him, wanted to soften. wanted to forgive. But then she remembered his voice on the phone. Emily is just for show. She remembered Victoria calling her worthless. She remembered every humiliation, every cruel word, every moment she'd been made to feel small. "You didn't just hurt me, Daniel," she said quietly, pulling her arm free. "You destroyed me. You took someone who loved you completely and turned her into someone who can barely recognize herself anymore. You made me feel worthless when I was never anything but valuable. You broke something in me that I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix." Tears were streaming down Daniel's face now. "I'm sorry. God, Emily, I'm so sorry. I love you." "I really do. I know I didn't show it, but I do. Please give me another chance. Please." Emily felt her own tears threatening, but she blinked them back. "You know what the saddest part is?" she whispered. "I actually believe that you believe that. I think you do love me, in your own broken, selfish way. But Daniel, your love isn't enough. It was never enough, because love without respect is just pretty words. And I deserve so much more than pretty words." She stepped back, putting distance between them. "You had someone who would have given you everything, who would have stood by you through anything, who loved you enough to hide her entire identity just to make sure your feelings were real. And you threw that away like it was garbage." Emily's voice hardened. "So no, I'm not going to give you another chance. I am not going to let you keep hurting me while you figure out how to be a decent human being. I'm done being your charity project, your photo opportunity, your convenient cover story." She looked around the room one last time. 3 hours, she said. "Decide if your pride is worth more than your survival." Then Emily Carter Wyndham walked out of that conference room with her head held high, leaving the Hawthorne family to face the consequences of their cruelty. Emily made it to her car before the tears came. She collapsed into the back seat, and all the emotions she'd been holding back crashed over her like a wave. Marcus climbed in beside her, saying nothing, just handing her tissues as she sobbed. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" she asked between gasps. "You did the strong thing," Marcus said gently. "Whether it's right or wrong isn't for me to say. But Emily, you stood up for yourself. You showed them that their behavior has consequences. That's important." "It hurts so much," Emily whispered. "Even after everything, it still hurts." "That's because you really loved him," Marcus said. "And love doesn't die just because someone doesn't deserve it anymore. But pain isn't weakness, Emily. It's proof that you're human, that you can feel deeply. That's not something to be ashamed of." They sat in silence as Emily cried, releasing months of suppressed pain and humiliation. Finally, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Unknown. This is Chloe. Emily, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. You didn't deserve any of it. I was cruel because I was raised to think that's how you're supposed to treat people who have less. But you never had less. You had more than all of us combined. More kindness, more integrity, more grace. I'm ashamed of who I've been. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, and I'm sorry." Emily stared at the message, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. It was the first genuine apology she'd received, the first acknowledgement that she'd been wronged. She didn't respond. She wasn't ready for that yet, but she saved the message. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Richard Hawthorne calling. Emily almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Wyndham," Richard's voice was rough, defeated. "We've made our decision." Emily's heart pounded. "And we accept your terms." "All of them." Emily closed her eyes, a mixture of relief and sadness washing over her. "I'll have Marcus send over the paperwork immediately. The transaction will be completed by end of business next Friday." "Thank you," Richard said quietly. "I know you have no reason to help us. I know we don't deserve your mercy. But thank you for thinking of our employees, for not letting our mistakes destroy their livelihoods." There was a pause. "For what it's worth," Richard continued, his voice thick with emotion, "I am truly sorry. You came into our lives with nothing but love and honesty, and we treated you abhorrently. That's on us. That's on me. I raised my children to value the wrong things, and now we're all paying the price." "Yes," Emily said simply. "You are." She hung up before he could say anything else. "It's done," she told Marcus. "They accepted." Marcus nodded, pulling out his laptop to begin the legal process. But he paused, looking at Emily with concern. "How are you feeling?" Emily looked out the window at the Hawthorne Industries building, where inside a family was grappling with the destruction their own cruelty had caused. "I feel ... She searched for the word. "Empty. Like I should feel victorious or satisfied or something. But I just feel ... empty." "That's normal," Marcus said. "Revenge doesn't heal wounds, Emily. It just proves you have power. Healing will come later, with time." "I loved him so much," Emily whispered, watching the building. "How did I love someone who could treat me that way?" "You loved who you thought he was, who he pretended to be. That person was lovable. The real Daniel Hawthorne ... double quotes." Marcus shook his head. "He wasn't worthy of your love. But that doesn't mean you were wrong to give it. It just means he was wrong to waste it." The news broke like a thunderstorm. Shocking revelation. Hawthorne bride revealed as Wyndham heiress. The Cinderella who didn't need a prince. Emily Wyndham's secret identity. Billionaire heiress humiliated by fiance's family. Now she owns their company. The $950 million. Consequence. How the Hawthornes lost everything. Emily's phone exploded with calls, messages, interview requests. Everyone wanted her story. Everyone wanted to know why she'd hidden her identity, what really happened, how she felt. She ignored them all. Instead, she sat in her family's estate, the one she'd grown up in, the one she'd abandoned to play pretend in Daniel's world, and tried to figure out who Emily Carter Wyndham really was. Sarah came over every day, bringing food and forcing Emily to eat, to shower, to do basic human things when all Emily wanted to do was hide under blankets and cry. "You're a hero on social media," Sarah said one afternoon, scrolling through her phone. "Everyone's calling you a queen for standing up to them. There are memes, TikToks, entire Twitter threads analyzing every moment of your relationship and praising you for the revenge." "I don't feel like a hero," Emily said quietly. "I feel broken." "You're allowed to feel broken," Sarah said, setting down her phone and taking Emily's hand. "You went through something traumatic. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. You were humiliated and betrayed. Feeling broken doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." "I keep wondering," Emily said, "if I had just told him the truth from the beginning. If I hadn't hidden who I was, would things have been different?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "Emmy, this isn't your fault. You didn't make them treat you badly. You didn't make Daniel cheat. You didn't force Victoria to mock you or Chloe to be cruel. They did that on their own. And they did it because that's who they are. But no buts. You gave them every chance to be decent people. You gave them opportunity after opportunity to show basic human kindness. And they failed. Every single time. That's not on you." Emily wanted to believe her. She really did. Her phone rang. It was Marcus. "The paperwork is finalized," he said. "As of today, you officially own 75% of Hawthorne Industries. Richard has been notified. Daniel has been officially removed from all positions. It's done, Emily." "Okay," Emily said numbly. "Thank you, Marcus." "There's something else," Marcus said carefully. "Daniel has been trying to reach me. He wants to talk to you. He says he has something important to say." Emily's heart clenched. "Tell him no." "Are you sure?" He seemed ... different. Genuine, maybe. "I'm sure," Emily said. I don't have anything else to say to him. And I don't want to hear whatever excuses or apologies he's prepared. It's too late for that. Understood. I'll let him know. Emily hung up and sat in silence, staring at nothing. Emily threw herself into work. She took an active role in restructuring Hawthorne Industries, working 18-hour days, making decisions, implementing changes. It was easier to focus on business than to think about her shattered heart. The Hawthorne employees initially viewed her with suspicion. She was the woman who had taken over their company, after all. But as she began implementing changes, better health care, improved parental leave, mental health resources, fair wages, that suspicion turned to respect. Ms. Wyndham actually cares about us, she overheard one employee say. The Hawthorns treated us like numbers on a spreadsheet. She treats us like people. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. One afternoon, Emily was working in her new office at Hawthorne Industries, the office that used to be Daniel's, when her assistant buzzed in. Ms. Wyndham, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Who is it? Isabella Thornton. Emily's blood ran cold. Daniel's mistress. The woman he'd been seeing the whole time. Should I send her away? The assistant asked. Emily's first instinct was to say yes. She didn't want to see this woman. Didn't want to face another reminder of Daniel's betrayal. But curiosity won out. Send her in, Emily said. A moment later, Isabella Thornton walked into the office. She was beautiful, tall, elegant, perfectly put together. Everything the Hawthorns had probably wanted for Daniel. Ms. Wyndham, Isabella said, her voice soft. Thank you for seeing me. I almost didn't, Emily said coldly. What do you want? Isabella sat down without being invited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wanted to apologize. Apologize, Emily repeated flatly. For sleeping with my fiancé? Yes. And for ... double quotes, Isabella took a breath. For being part of the lie. I knew about you. I knew Daniel was engaged. And I didn't care. I told myself it was okay, because Daniel and I had history, because we loved each other first. But it wasn't okay. What we did to you was cruel. Why are you telling me this? Emily asked. Why now? Because, Isabella said, tears forming in her eyes, Daniel told me the truth about you, about who you really are. And I realized something. She looked at Emily directly. He didn't cheat on you because of me. He cheated on you because of him, because he's incapable of real love, because he only knows how to value things that increase his status or make him look good. Isabella wiped her eyes. After everything came out, Daniel came to me. He said now that the engagement was off, we could finally be together publicly. Do you know what I realized? That he didn't love me either. He just wanted me because his family approved of me, because I fit the image. I could have told you that, Emily said, her voice hard. I know, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. I'm sorry I was part of hurting you. You didn't deserve any of this. Emily stared at Isabella, trying to find anger or hatred. But all she felt was tired. Did Daniel send you here? She asked. No, Isabella said quickly. He doesn't know I'm here. I came because I wanted you to know that you weren't wrong, that the man you fell in love with, the one from the coffee shop, he wasn't real. Daniel showed us both what we wanted to see. And when we were no longer useful, when the image didn't matter anymore, his mask came off. She stood up, preparing to leave. For what it's worth, Isabella said, you're better than all of us combined. You loved genuinely. You gave honestly. And you had every right to do what you did. I hope someday you find someone who deserves that kind of love. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Emily sat alone in her office, staring at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Isabella's words echoed in her mind. You loved genuinely. Yes, she had. And maybe that was enough. Maybe being someone who could love deeply, even when that love was wasted, was better than being someone who couldn't love at all. Emily was leaving the office late one evening when she saw him. Daniel was standing in the lobby, looking thinner than she remembered, his expensive suit hanging slightly loose on his frame. When he saw her, he stood up, his expression a mixture of hope and desperation. "Emily," he said, "please. Just 5 minutes." "Security," Emily called, but Daniel held up his hands. "I just want to talk. Please. 5 minutes, and I'll never bother you again." "I swear." Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something broken in his eyes, something defeated. Against her better judgment, she nodded. 5 minutes, in the conference room, and Marcus stays with us. They sat across from each other at the same table where Emily had revealed her identity a month ago. Marcus stood by the door, watching Daniel carefully. "What do you want?" Emily asked, her voice flat. "To tell you I'm sorry," Daniel said. "To tell you that you were right about everything. I was selfish and cruel, and I treated you like you were nothing when you were everything." "Okay," Emily said. "You've told me? Are we done?" "No, please." Daniel leaned forward. "Emily, I've spent the last month thinking about everything. About who I was, who I became. I talked to a therapist. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. And," Emily said, unmoved, "and I realized that I was so focused on being who my family wanted me to be, on living up to their expectations, that I forgot how to be a real person. I forgot how to value things that actually matter." He reached across the table, trying to take her hand, but Emily pulled back. "I love you," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I really do. And I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance? Any possibility that someday you might forgive me?" Emily looked at him for a long moment. She saw the tears in his eyes, the genuine remorse on his face. Part of her, the part that still remembered loving him, wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances. But she remembered too much, remembered too many wounds. "Daniel," she said gently but firmly, "I do forgive you." Hope sparked in his eyes. "But," Emily continued, "forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I'm willing to put myself through that pain again. It just means I'm choosing not to carry around hatred for you. I'm choosing to let go and move on. But I've changed," Daniel said desperately. "I'm different now. I can prove it to you." "No," Emily interrupted. "You haven't changed. You've learned consequences. There's a difference. You didn't become a better person because you realized treating people badly was wrong. You're trying to change because you lost something valuable. That's not growth, Daniel. That's just regret." She stood up, preparing to leave. "You taught me something important," Emily said. "You taught me that I deserve someone who values me from the beginning, who doesn't need to lose me to realize my worth, who loves me loudly, proudly, and consistently, not just when it's convenient or profitable. I can be that person," Daniel pleaded. "Just give me a chance to show you." Emily smiled sadly. "Maybe you can be that person. Maybe someday you'll grow into someone capable of real love. But Daniel, I'm not going to wait around to find out. I'm not going to be your practice run while you figure out how to be decent." She walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. "I hope you find happiness, Daniel. Real happiness. The kind that doesn't require hurting other people. The kind that comes from being honest and genuine and kind. But I won't be part of that journey. My path leads somewhere else now." "Where?" Daniel asked, tears streaming down his face. "Forward," Emily said simply. "Toward people who see my value without needing to lose me first. Toward a life where I don't have to hide who I am to be loved. Toward healing and growth, and maybe, eventually, toward love again. Real love this time." She opened the door. "Goodbye, Daniel. I genuinely hope you become a better person. Just not for me." Emily walked out of that conference room for the last time, leaving Daniel Hawthorne behind in every possible way. Emily stood at the podium in front of hundreds of people, her heart calm, her voice steady. "When I started the Carter Wyndham Foundation," she said, looking out at the crowd, "I wanted to create something that would help people who feel invisible. People who are judged by their circumstances instead of their character. People who deserve respect and dignity regardless of what their bank account looks like." The audience applauded. Emily smiled. "I learned something important over the past year. I learned that how people treat you when they think you have nothing reveals who they really are. And I learned that true strength isn't about revenge or power. It's about standing up for your own worth, even when nobody else sees it." In the audience, she saw Sarah beaming proudly. She saw Marcus nodding with approval. She saw dozens of people whose lives had been changed by her foundation's work. And in the very back, she saw Chloe Hawthorne. They'd been meeting for coffee, occasionally careful, cautious conversations where Chloe was slowly learning to be a better person, and Emily was slowly learning to trust again. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was possibility. "I also learned," Emily continued, "that fairy tales are dangerous. Not because they promise happy endings, but because they teach us that love requires a rescue. That we need someone else to complete us. That our worth is determined by who chooses us." She paused, looking around the room. "The truth is, we don't need fairy tales. We need mirrors. We need to see ourselves clearly, value ourselves honestly, and refuse to accept less than we deserve. We need to be our own heroes before we invite anyone else into our story." The crowd rose to their feet, applauding. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were good tears. Healing tears. After the speech, as she was gathering her notes, a man approached. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Miss Wyndham," he said, extending his hand. That was incredibly powerful. "I'm James Mitchell. I run a nonprofit that helps victims of emotional abuse. I'd love to talk to you about a potential collaboration." Emily shook his hand, feeling a flutter of something. Not love, not yet, but possibility. "I'd like that," she said. "Let me give you my card." As they talked, Emily felt something shift inside her. For the first time in months, she wasn't looking backward at what she'd lost. She was looking forward at what she might find. That night, alone in her apartment, Emily looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. She saw someone stronger than she'd been. Someone wiser. Someone scarred, but not broken. "You survived," she told her reflection. "You stood up for yourself. You proved your worth, not to them, but to yourself." Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Sarah, so proud of you today. Also, I saw you talking to that cute nonprofit guy." "Just saying." Emily laughed, typing back, one step at a time. "I'm still healing, Sarah, and that's okay. Take all the time you need. But Emmy, you're going to be more than okay. You're going to be extraordinary." Emily set down her phone and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably still trying to figure out who he was without his family's power and money. Isabella was probably trying to learn how to be alone. The Hawthorne family was probably still reeling from the consequences of their cruelty. But Emily wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about tomorrow, about the foundation she was building, about the lives she was changing, about the woman she was becoming. She had been called a nobody. She had been mocked, humiliated, and betrayed. She had been treated like her love was worthless. And she had responded not with cruelty, not with revenge, but with strength, with dignity, with the quiet power of someone who knows their worth. The $950 million deal hadn't just saved a company. It had saved Emily herself, not because of the money or the power, but because it had forced her to stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop pretending to be less than she was. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes love isn't enough. That you can give someone everything and they still won't value it. That the problem was never her. It was them. And most importantly, she had learned that she didn't need anyone to validate her worth. She had always been valuable. She had always been enough. The Hawthorns just hadn't been worthy of seeing it. Emily walked into the Wyndham Industries annual gala, her head held high. She wore a stunning emerald gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair swept up elegantly, confidence radiating from every pore. The ballroom was packed with business leaders, philanthropists, and press. Everyone wanted to meet the woman who had become a legend, the heiress who had hidden her identity, been humiliated, and then rose like a phoenix to claim her power. "Ms. Wyndham," a reporter called out, "how does it feel to be named one of Forbes' most influential women under 35? Emily smiled. "It feels like validation for all the young women out there who have been told they re not enough. I hope my story reminds them that their worth isn't determined by how others treat them." "And what about the Hawthorne situation? Any regrets about how you handled it?" Emily paused, considering the question carefully. "No regrets," she said finally. "I handled it the only way I could, with honesty and boundaries. I showed them consequences, yes, but I also showed mercy. Hawthorne Industries still exists. Their employees kept their jobs. The family maintained some dignity. I could have destroyed them completely, but that's not who I am." "Have you spoken to Daniel Hawthorne since the takeover?" "No," Emily said simply. "And I don't plan to. That chapter of my life is closed. I'm focused on the future now." She moved through the crowd, greeting guests, discussing business, feeling completely in her element. This was who she really was, not the quiet, diminished version of herself she'd become while trying to fit into Daniel's world, but the strong, capable woman she'd always been underneath. "Emily," she turned at the familiar voice. James Mitchell stood there, looking handsome in his tuxedo, holding 2 glasses of champagne. They'd been dating for 3 months now, slowly, carefully, both of them healing from past wounds. "You look stunning," he said, handing her a glass. "Thank you," Emily said, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "You clean up pretty well yourself." James laughed. "I have something to tell you." "Oh?" "I got the funding for the expanded shelter program. Thanks to your foundation support, we're going to be able to help 3 times as many people next year." Emily's eyes lit up. "James, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you," he said, taking her hand. "You know that, right? You've changed my work, my life, everything." Emily squeezed his hand, feeling a flutter of something warm and real. Not the desperate, all-consuming love she'd felt for Daniel that had been built on illusion and hope. This was different, steadier, built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership. "I think we've changed each other," she said softly. Before James could respond, there was a commotion near the entrance. Emily turned to see what was happening. Her heart stopped. Daniel Hawthorne stood in the doorway, looking haggard and desperate. Security was already moving toward him, but he called out across the room, "Emily, please, I need to talk to you." The entire ballroom went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to watch the drama unfold. Emily felt James tense beside her, ready to step in, but she gently touched his arm. "It's okay," she said. "I've got this." She walked toward Daniel, her steps measured and calm. When she reached him, security stood nearby, waiting for her signal. "Daniel," she said quietly, "what are you doing here?" Up close, she could see how much he'd changed. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes were red-rimmed and haunted. He looked like a man who had lost everything. "I had to see you," he said, his voice breaking. "I had to tell you. Emily, I've been in therapy, real therapy." And I finally understand what I did to you. I finally see how badly I hurt you. Okay, Emily said calmly. I'm glad you're getting help. I don't want your forgiveness anymore, Daniel continued, tears streaming down his face. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I was a monster. I treated you like garbage when you were the best thing that ever happened to me. He wiped his eyes roughly. I lost everything, Emily. My position in the company. My family's respect. Isabella left me when she realized I couldn't give her the lifestyle she wanted. I have nothing left. And you know what? I deserve it. I deserve all of it. Emily felt the eyes of the entire room on her. She knew this moment would be photographed, analyzed, turned into headlines and social media posts. Everyone was waiting to see how she would respond. She could be cruel. She could mock him the way he'd mocked her. She could turn him away publicly and humiliate him the way he'd humiliated her. But that wasn't who Emily was. Daniel, she said gently, I'm sorry you're hurting. I really am. And I hope your therapy helps you become a better person. But this you showing up here, making a scene, this isn't about me. This is about you wanting absolution. You want me to tell you that you're not a bad person, that you can be redeemed. She paused, choosing her words carefully. And maybe you can be. Maybe you will be. But Daniel, I'm not the one who can give you that. You have to give it to yourself. You have to do the work, make the changes, become someone better, not because you want me back or because you want to undo the consequences, but because it's the right thing to do. I know, Daniel whispered. I know. I just ... I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost. I see what I destroyed. I believe you, Emily said, and I hope someday you find peace with it. But Daniel, you need to leave now. You need to let me move on. You need to let both of us move on. Daniel nodded, defeated. As security escorted him toward the exit, he looked back one last time. You were always too good for me, he said. I just wish I'd seen it before I lost you. Then he was gone. Emily stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of 100 stares. Then she turned back to the crowd and raised her champagne glass. To new beginnings, she said clearly, her voice ringing through the silent ballroom. And to knowing your worth. The room erupted in applause. People rushed forward, congratulating her on her grace, her strength, her composure. But Emily's eyes found James, who stood exactly where she'd left him, watching her with respect and understanding. She walked back to him, feeling lighter than she had in months. That was incredible, James said softly. Are you okay? I'm more than okay, Emily said, and she meant it. I'm free. Emily sat in her office at Wyndham Industries, looking at the framed photo on her desk. It was from her wedding day, but not the wedding to Daniel that never happened. This was her wedding to James, a small, intimate ceremony with only their closest friends and family. No press, no cameras, no performance. Just two people who had found each other after being broken, who had learned to love carefully, honestly, genuinely. In the photo, James was looking at her like she was his entire world. And Emily was smiling not the fake, painful smile she'd worn throughout her relationship with Daniel, but a real smile that reached her eyes. Her phone buzzed with an email. It was from Richard Hawthorne. Subject: Thank you, Ms. Wyndham. I know I have no right to reach out to you. I know you owe me nothing. But I wanted you to know that Hawthorne Industries is thriving under Wyndham's leadership. Our employees are happier and more productive than ever. The changes you implemented have saved not just the company, but the lives and livelihoods of everyone who depends on it. More importantly, I wanted to thank you for teaching all of us a lesson we desperately needed to learn. That dignity and respect aren't earned by wealth or status. They're owed to every human being, regardless of circumstances. My family paid a heavy price for our cruelty. Daniel is still struggling to find his way. Victoria and I are in marriage counseling, trying to understand how we raised such damaged children. Chloe has been working with your foundation, trying to become a better person. We deserved everything that happened to us. But you showed mercy anyway. You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to save our employees instead. That's a kindness we didn't earn and don't deserve. I hope you found the happiness you always deserved. I hope someone is treating you the way we should have treated you from the beginning. With deep regret and deeper gratitude, Richard Hawthorne Emily read the email twice, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly. Not triumph. Just ... pat peace. She had been humiliated. She had been betrayed. She had been treated like she was worthless by people who thought they were better than her. And she had survived. More than survived, she had thrived. She had built a foundation that helped thousands of people. She had restructured a company and saved hundreds of jobs. She had found real love with someone who valued her from the beginning. She had become exactly who she was always meant to be. The girl they called Nobody had become somebody extraordinary, not because of her wealth or her power, but because of her strength, her grace, her refusal to let cruelty diminish her light. Emily typed a brief response to Richard's email. Mr. Hawthorne, thank you for your message. I'm glad Hawthorne Industries is doing well. I'm glad your family is working on healing. Real growth is painful, but it's worth it. I have found happiness. Real, genuine happiness. The kind that comes from being seen and valued for who you truly are. I hope you and your family find that too. Best regards, Emily Carter Wyndham. She hit send and closed her laptop. Through her office window, she could see the city stretching out below, full of possibility, full of promise, full of people trying to find their way. Somewhere out there, Daniel was hopefully learning to be better. The Hawthorns were hopefully learning to value people over profit. Isabella was hopefully learning to stand on her own. But Emily wasn't worried about them anymore. She had her own life to live, her own love to nurture, her own purpose to fulfill. James appeared in her doorway, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, her favorite. Surprise, he said, grinning. I know you have a long day, so I thought I'd bring a little sunshine. Emily's heart swelled. This was what love was supposed to look like. Thoughtful, consistent, genuine. Thank you, she said, taking the flowers and pulling him into a kiss. You're perfect. Not perfect, James said, smiling against her lips. Just someone who sees your worth and tries to honor it every day. That's what makes you perfect for me, Emily said. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emily thought about how far she'd come. From the girl who hid her identity to test love, to the woman who was humiliated and broken, to the person she was now strong, healed, genuinely happy. The Hawthorns had tried to diminish her. They had called her nobody. They had treated her like she was lucky to be noticed by them, but they had been wrong about everything. Emily Carter Wyndham had never been nobody. She had always been somebody extraordinary. She had always been valuable. She had always been worthy of love and respect. She just needed to stop looking for validation from people who were incapable of seeing her worth. And now, surrounded by people who truly loved her, doing work that genuinely mattered, married to someone who cherished her every single day, Emily finally understood the most important truth of all. You don't need a prince to have a fairy tale ending. You don't need someone to rescue you or complete you or validate you. You just need to see your own worth, stand in your own power, and refuse to accept anything less than you deserve. The rest, the love, the happiness, the success that all comes naturally when you finally understand that you are always enough. Emily had been called a nobody. She had been humiliated. She had been betrayed. And she had risen from those ashes stronger, wiser, and more powerful than anyone who hurt her could have ever imagined. That wasn't a fairy tale. That was real life. And it was more beautiful than any story because it was true. The end. Sometimes the people who mock you are the ones holding their own destruction in their hands. Sometimes the woman you look down on is the one who can bring your world crashing down. And sometimes the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so genuinely fulfilled that you forget they even exist. This is the story of Emily Carter Wyndham, the woman who is called Nobody, the woman who proved that knowing your worth is the greatest power of all. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of your own worth, please share it. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that they are valuable, that they deserve respect, and that they don't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. You are enough. You always have been. You always will be.